This is a special encore edition of Let It Rip. We're living in a time like no other. Since March, we've been coming to you not from our studios on Fifth Avenue in the shadow of the Empire State Building, but remotely as COVID-19 slammed New York, the country, and the world. But we're here, and this is Let It Rip. You know, no one could have predicted all that has happened over the last 6 months or so. And in the midst of the pandemic, with the killing of George Floyd, the issues of police brutality and criminal justice reform surged to the forefront, sparking huge protests here and around the world. Let It Rip has been on top of it from the start, with New York State Assemblyman Charles Barron and former NYPD Lieutenant Darren Porter squaring off on the issues of police brutality and criminal justice reform. Let's listen in.
Mike, we had 41 bullets for Amadou Diallo. What was the response? They need training. Then after that, we had 50 bullets for Sean Bell. What do they need? Training. Mike, we can't play with this. They don't need no training. And this kind of soft response like we're getting from my colleague here on this show, that kind of soft response is causing police to continue to do this. They need to be investigated, indicted, convicted, and sent to jail. Remember that Kai Gurley case? We pushed Ken Thompson, he indicted, he convicted, and he said no jail time. Police have to go to jail. No training. They've been trained to the teeth. Every time we have this, it's training, because that's a soft response. No one's gonna get angry at anybody on this panel for saying they need to be trained. Why don't you say they need to go to jail? You saw the video. His knee was in the man's neck. He rolled up on the police, the innocent person watching. The guy wasn't doing anything, cuffed him and still beat him. He needs training. He needs jail.
I can respond as a practitioner in working as a lieutenant in the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau. And I can say this, on a case-by-case basis, you need to evaluate what occurred. What appeared to us as civilians is there was an act of misconduct. If there was an act of misconduct, by all means, I think the wheels of justice need to move forward accordingly. And that's really what we look to in terms of what the outcome is. Now, when we look at the quantitative statistics in terms of the number of officers that have been prosecuted for wrongful acts, I can't tell you that the numbers are good or bad, but I can tell you this. We need to look at it from a case-by-case basis, as opposed to exacerbating or inflaming the situation. We want to look at how we can mend the fences the best way possible, because at the end of the day, police are public servants. Our taxpayers pay the revenue that supports the police department. Therefore, they need to adhere to the requests of us as a community.
And we also heard from State Senator John Liu about the ugly side of politics and the pandemic.
President Trump has taken some heat for repeatedly calling the coronavirus the Chinese virus.
It comes from China. Racist. It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate. Yeah, please, John. Please.
AIDS behind you. Are you
I have great love for all of the people from our country.
What do you think of that?
Well, you started by saying that that COVID-19 has brought out the best and also the worst in some of us. And once again, this current occupant of the White House demonstrates his true colors, not bringing people together, but dividing them. And as an Asian American, in no worse way than to continuously and repeatedly call the coronavirus, COVID-19, the Chinese virus. It is despicable. It tears people apart, and it actually brings out and condones xenophobia and racism against Asian Americans.
Are you getting reports, though, of hate directed at Asians related to the virus because of this?
I mean, I've received many complaints in my office about people faced with bias incidents, anywhere from seemingly benign gestures and comments to outright obnoxious remarks to acts of discrimination and even acts of violence, unfortunately. And there have been too many of these incidents actually documented on social media and in the mainstream news. with videos about what unprovoked attacks or incidents where Asian Americans are targeted as being the cause of COVID-19. It's just
what's the worst thing? What's the worst thing that sticks out in your mind from these reports?
Well, a recent news report talks about how a woman was stabbed because she was Asian American wearing a face mask and being blamed for COVID-19. We have seen videos of people just being randomly knocked to the ground in the street and stomped on because of COVID-19, to less violent but still unacceptable gestures and comments levied at Asian Americans. The point is that number one, this doesn't. There's no connection between being Asian and COVID-19, and number two, this doesn't help us fight. We should all be banding together to get through this crisis. It is a health crisis. It is something that we all have to be mindful of. There are rules out there that the vast majority of people are obeying, and then there are also lots of instances where people are helping each other. But we have a few bad apples out there, and that's why I'm particularly grateful to Attorney General Tish James, who set up a hotline specifically to deal with these kinds of anti-Asian bias incidents.
Over the last 3 seasons, we've covered a lot of topics that are still relevant today. We took a good look at women's reproductive rights. Roe v. Wade is the law of the land and has been since the Supreme Court decision was handed down in 1973, allowing abortions in all 50 states. But increasingly, women's reproductive rights have been in danger. We looked at the issue with Planned Parenthood's Chief of External Affairs, Christina Chang, and the Organizing and Innovation Manager at Girls for Gender Equity, Brittany Brathwaite. Let's listen in.
What we're seeing them do is deliberately pass unconstitutional laws, so that, as you said earlier in your opening, so that they are trying to provoke the Supreme Court to hear these cases in their hopes of overturning Roe v. Wade. And we've already seen what the world looks like in a pre-Roe era. We saw that women were dying. We saw that the only way to make the one true way of making abortion unsafe is to make it illegal and to make it inaccessible. And so when we see these bans being passed, when we see them continuing to move that line, we are going to move to a world where there's going to be have and have-nots.
Brittany?
I think that it is the individual's decision about abortion or any other forms of healthcare they choose to access. And I think what's really important is that this is not new, right? The attack on abortion and people's bodily autonomy is not we're in an extreme time, and we're seeing extreme things happen, but this is not new. And these attacks have looked a lot different, and we can talk about this for a long time, whether it's controlling people's bodily autonomy or subjecting people to forms of violence. That the attacks that we're seeing are they're new packaging, but they're not new attacks. They're just repackaged in really extreme ways. And so I agree, the government has no place in a woman's body, and also has no place in anyone's decision about what you do with your body.
When I look at some of this stuff, Christine, I think that it almost is as if they want to turn the clock back to like the 1950s.
In some respects, yes. I mean, I think it goes back to what Brittany was saying about just the fundamental ability to choose your own destiny, to find your own path, and to decide what that looks like. And so becoming a parent, if you want to, and how that affects your trajectory, is your decision and yours alone. And so that's fundamental. So you can talk about it in terms of turning the clock back in terms of women in the workforce, but it goes back more fundamentally than that. It's about taking away the rights of self-determination for half of the population.
One of the things that kind of strikes me is the fact that you have people who are against abortion and call that murder, but at the same time, they favor the death penalty. I'm going to play a clip right now. This is Barry Hovis of Missouri talking about the death penalty.
I know I heard earlier about the death penalty, how, we want to allow babies that we believe in pro-life, but then we will still do the death penalty. But there's a big exception when we're talking about innocent life. and someone who's went out and purposely killed someone that would make them eligible for that death penalty.
To me, it just seems strange to use terms like murder and all that when you're talking about a person's health.
Yeah, I don't think that they are the same conversation. They just don't appear to be the same conversation to me. The use of the term, I mean, the rhetoric, right, has been created. It's a strategy, right, when you say things like murder, when you call a fetus a baby, things like that are years of planning, of strategic design to get people to think about abortion in a certain type of way, which is why those of us who are reproductive justice advocates and activists and pro-abortion really don't use those terms or even repeat them, because we know that they have been strategized to create language and rhetoric that is harmful to what the actual care is. Abortion is healthcare, period.
We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, guns and social media. I'm Mike Gilliam, and this is a special encore edition of Let It Rip.
You're watching CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Welcome back to the special encore edition of Let It Rip. I'm Mike Gilliam. As we wrap up our third season, we're taking a look back at some of the topics and shows that proved to be very relevant both when they aired and now. Over the last few years, mass shootings seem to occur over and over like clockwork. We took a closer look at hate and guns, two topics that seem to be intertwined. The results often deadly. Here's a piece of our conversation with John Jay College professor and co-author of the book Addressing the Myths of Terrorism in America, Cillian Duran, and civil rights attorney and community activist Roger Wareham. Let's listen in. Talk about terrorism and what it actually looks like, and what your research says about that.
So in our paper, Addressing the Myths of Terrorism, one of the colloquial myths that we looked at was this idea that post 9/11, the national rhetoric was that terrorism was predominantly Muslim, that it was perpetrated by foreign actors. In our research, we found that overwhelmingly, almost 90% of domestic terrorism in the United States for the last 27 years has been committed by white actors, predominantly white males, of national origin, so they are born here, they are American citizens. It is very rarely does it occur from this idea of the Black identity extremists or jihadists, as we have coined them. Only about 18% of perpetrators were actually jihadist extremists. A lot of that has to do with the way that the media generates these instances. So we over-sensationalize these black swan events. Something like 9/11, something like the Pulse nightclub shooting, something even like Timothy McVeigh. These are events that are so rare, few and far between. But because if it bleeds, it leads, that's all you see coming across your screen. So if I'm living in Nebraska and CNN is showing me the San Bernardino shooters over and over and over again, that's all I'm going to see. So now Donald Trump, in his rhetoric, we saw him with the Muslim ban. He was, 3-4 days in office maybe, when he decided to do this travel ban based on data that I have no idea where the administration got that from, that this is where the majority of terrorism was coming from, when really the ban should have been in the heartland of America.
We also had a clip here that I want to play of Dick Durbin talking to the FBI director, Christopher Wray, and he's discussing how you designate things, whether they are terrorism or not. Let's listen to that.
We are in a very tense moment in American history on the issue of race. We are having a national conversation that we haven't had in a long time about racism and the reaction, what's acceptable and what is not. And what I'm asking you from the FBI point of view, and what you've told me, is that we ought to take care, as seriously as we take foreign-inspired terrorism, there is a domestic terrorism underway in the name of race that is as threatening in some respects as the foreign terrorism. That's the way I hear it.
I think the greatest terrorist threat to the homeland is the homegrown violent extremist. I will say that we take
foreign-inspired,
which is jihadist-inspired violence. That does not mean, by any stretch of the imagination, that we don't take domestic terrorism, including hate crime committed on behalf of some kind of white supremacist ideology extremely seriously.
Okay, so you kind of get a feel for that there, what he is saying, Christopher Wray. That's the FBI director. Now let's listen to the president and his take on this, and we'll kind of talk about the difference between the two.
Today, white nationalism is a rising threat around the world.
I don't really. I think it's a small group of people that have very, very serious problems. I guess if you look at what happened in New Zealand, perhaps that's a case. I don't know enough about it yet. They're just learning about the person and the people involved.
But what's your take on where he's coming down on that?
He's being very consistent.
Yes.
You know, he's being very consistent. I mean, his position still is that the Central Park Five did not, that they actually raped Patricia and attacked Patricia merely, even though all the evidence showed it. And I was on I was one of the lawyers in terms of got their sentence vacated and the settlement. So he's very consistent. What he ignores is Iman Jamil Abdul Alamin, who was formerly known as H. Rap Brown, when he was the head of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, once said, violence is as American as cherry pie, and the powers that be in the media don't want to deal with it. That's the nature of their existence, their arrival and maintenance in this country has been the use of violence, and it's always been directed against communities of color, and then sometimes it spills over into their own community. I think that's the reality that they don't want to deal with, and that's the myth that Trump perpetuates.
One thing can be said of the president. He's been consistent in making racially tinged statements that have inflamed racial tensions throughout his time in office. That behavior was on full display when he went after the group of progressive congresswomen often referred to as the Squad: Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Ayanna Pressley, telling them maybe they should go back to where they came from. We had strong reaction from Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr. and national activist Linda Sarsour, who co-chaired the 2017 Women's March, as well as the 2017 Day Without a Woman and the 2019 Women's March.
For me, when you look at these 4 congresswomen known as the Squad, which I like that name, and by the way, let me just be clear, I'm with them, right? They exemplify everything, Mike, that's good about and great about this country. And they exemplify, in my opinion, what it means to love your country. First of all, he's disgusting for these remarks, and we know that about him. It's nothing new. His racism goes back to his editorial or his ads on the Central Park Five. It goes back to him being birther-in-chief. Remember when he made his announcement to run for president of the United States, how what he said about the immigrant, especially from Mexico, the Muslim ban. It goes on and on and on. So we know that about him. In terms of the 4 congresswomen, first of all, 3 of them are Americans, and what better way to exhibit your love for country the way Omar did, and to come here with your family and be part of the political process. I think that it epitomizes love for country, and what's even sadder or disheartening is not necessarily that this clown attacks him in such a way, is the lack of courage by the leadership of his party.
That's right.
And even some Democrats, and I'm a Democrat, and the fact that they haven't really chimed in.
Linda, jump in here.
I mean, I share identities with 3 of these women. Rashida's Palestinian. I'm also Palestinian. Ilhan Omar is Muslim, and so is Rashida, so I'm also Muslim. And I'm also born and raised in New York City like Alex. So for me, just listening to this president tell 4 women to go back to where they came from, he has no analysis. He has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. I mean, are you telling Ayanna Pressley, who is a descendant of enslaved Africans, to go back to where she came from? Are you telling Rashida Tlaib, who's Palestinian, whose country of origin of her parents is under an occupation? We actually can't go back to live in Palestine, even if we actually wanted to go there. It's just really deplorable to see this coming from the president, because what it does is it reinforces the racism that we already know exists. And it emboldens, if you have watched the type of threats that they have received, if you watch the type of trolling they receive online. And one of the things about the situation that triggers me most is I've been attacked by the son of the president a few times on social media. And when people, ordinary people who are Trump supporters, see the son of the president or the president himself it makes them bold. They feel like, oh, okay, so if the son of the president and the president are going after this lady or these women, that means we can too, and there will be no consequences. I mean, we have a president who said he can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue right here, and he wouldn't be held accountable. So we have to understand that this is, whether you're Republican or independent or a Democrat, this is not about whether you agree with these 4 women or you don't agree with them. This is about safety and security of people. This is about living in a country where they are allowed to say whatever they want. And on the issue of being anti-American, I always say to people all the time, they are for me, the epitome of a patriot. For me, a patriot is someone who wakes up every morning and fights to make their country truly the greatest nation on earth. Anyone who sits around and says this is just how it is and this is the status quo that we're going to maintain, you are not a patriot. And
it appears to me they're only working to make America better.
Absolutely. I mean, their positions, they're consistent, they're bold. And to be clear, and the borough president said something very important, our own party got to get it together. Because we have to stand by the squad, because they are just an example. They're just using them as martyrs of our movement for change in America. So Nancy Pelosi needs to stand by her sisters in this moment and be bold and courageous in the face of this opposition. Because if something happens to these 4, then it becomes free range on everybody else and every other politician in this country who's trying to do something right.
Much of the debate, whether it be about the president, hate, COVID-19, election interference, mass killings, bullying, whatever topic you choose, has been carried out on social media. The platforms of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, and others are a part of our lives, but many question whether they've become too powerful and whether they should be more responsible about what appears on sites. We looked at the industry with Andrea Becker, a third-year doctoral student at the City University of New York Graduate Center, who received a National Science Foundation Fellowship to study cyberstalking, and Jalan Agnew, who's been working in the field of social work for 13 years. Now, you're studying cyberstalking, and you have stories that happened to you, right?
Right, yeah. I was cyberstalked when I was in college for a few years.
Tell me about it. What happened?
Yeah, well, it was a complete stranger that found me on Facebook. So, like, when you just asked the problems about being all over social media, I think part of it is that it has the capacity to induce these, like, obsessive fantasies in people. If you're seeing someone over and over, you feel like you know them. And so, yeah, for me, what was interesting was that a lot of it was in the language of, like, romance and love. Like, he was just working really hard to convince me to be his partner, etc.
And you didn't even know each other?
I didn't even know him. Yeah, it was very wild. So now it got me really interested in, like, the sociology part of it and, like, why it happens and how people understand it as well.
What's the worst story that you've heard about social media?
Oh, boy. So I work with a lot of teenagers, and the worst story I heard, girls in love with boy, girl sends inappropriate picture to boy. When the relationship is great, they break up, he sends it to every single member of that student body. The whole school now has naked pictures of her, which led her to a suicide attempt, actually, and ended her up in the hospital because not only is that picture circulated, now she's going to school and everybody's continuing to taunt her. That picture will never, ever go away.
Wow, that's
14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
14 years
14.
old.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness. What do you think it is?
That's the case with most of these, like, sexual nature crimes. The closer you are to them, the more likely that will happen. But at the same time, we take those less seriously. At least that's what my research shows. The closer the stalker is to the victim, the less seriously we take it, the less fearful we view it. But it's also the most dangerous type of harassment.
So we've covered a lot of ground here and had some very good and relevant conversations that still ring true to this day. We're going to take a short break, and then I'll be back with some final thoughts. I'm Mike Gilliam, and this is a special encore edition of Let It Rip.
You're watching CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Welcome back to this special encore edition of Let It Rip. I'm Mike Gilliam. It's time now for some final thoughts. As we prepare for another season of Let It Rip, I wish I could tell you the upcoming year will be a fantastic year. With the looming coronavirus pandemic and a possible second wave, I cannot. I can safely tell you that this will be a challenging year with lots to talk about, and all of it against the backdrop of the pandemic. The presidential election is getting closer and closer, and everyone expects that to be a bruising campaign full of negative campaign ads and trickery. Already it's being called a rigged election. Will the votes be counted? Will they be mailed in? Will the outcome be honored? There are also questions about education and what that will look like. When will in-person instruction begin, and how extensive will it be? Then there's the economy, which is not completely reopened yet. We're also facing huge unemployment numbers, and some say a tsunami of evictions is on the horizon, which could lead to massive homelessness. The outlook for spectator sports with fans in stadiums looks bleak given the virus. Yes, it looks to be a challenging time, but we'll be here doing our best to have the conversations that matter about the topics that are important to each and every one of us. I want to take a moment to thank someone you don't see on our podcast, our very talented producer, Tyreek Washington. For the last 3 years, he's worked tirelessly to put this all together, from booking guests to choosing topics to assembling the show. He's helped to keep us on point. Thanks, Tyreek. So that wraps up this season. I'm Mike Gilliam, and we hope you'll join us soon for the next season of Let It Rip. Stay safe.